The Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962 was one of the most dangerous moments of the Cold War, as it brought the United States and the Soviet Union to the brink of nuclear conflict. The crisis began when U.S. intelligence discovered that the Soviet Union had secretly placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the American coast. This was seen as an existential threat, especially since the U.S. had already placed its own nuclear missiles in Turkey and Italy, which could strike the Soviet Union. The background to this event dates back to 1959, when Fidel Castro came to power in Cuba after overthrowing the U.S.-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista. Castro's government quickly formed an alliance with the Soviet Union, adopting communist policies, which alarmed the United States. In 1961, the U.S., under President John F. Kennedy, attempted to overthrow Castro by supporting the failed Bay of Pigs invasion, further strengthening Cuba's ties with the Soviets. As Cold War tensions escalated, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev saw an opportunity to counterbalance the U.S. missile threat in Europe by secretly deploying nuclear missiles in Cuba. When the U.S. discovered the missile sites in October 1962, President Kennedy faced the difficult decision of how to respond. After intense discussions with his advisors, Kennedy opted for a naval blockade, or quarantine, around Cuba to prevent further Soviet shipments of military supplies. The situation was incredibly tense as Soviet ships approached the blockade, raising fears of direct confrontation. Both nations were prepared for war, with the U.S. military moving to its highest state of readiness short of conflict. During this time, diplomatic efforts between Kennedy and Khrushchev were crucial. Khrushchev sent two letters to Kennedy, one proposing a peaceful solution, where the Soviets would remove the missiles in exchange for a U.S. promise not to invade Cuba, and the other more confrontational. Kennedy chose to respond to the more conciliatory letter, ignoring the aggressive one, and after several days of back-and-forth negotiations, the crisis finally de-escalated. On October 28, Khrushchev agreed to withdraw the Soviet missiles from Cuba in exchange for Kennedy's public assurance that the U.S. would not invade the island. Secretly, Kennedy also agreed to remove American missiles from Turkey, though this part of the deal was kept confidential for many years. The Cuban Missile Crisis had a profound impact on international relations, as both superpowers recognized how close they had come to nuclear war. As a result, a direct communication line between Washington and Moscow, known as the Hotline, was established to prevent future misunderstandings, and it also paved the way for nuclear arms control agreements, such as the Partial Test Ban Treaty in 1963. The crisis bolstered Kennedy's reputation, while Khrushchev faced criticism at home for appearing to back down, ultimately contributing to his removal from power in 1964. The Cuban Missile Crisis remains a vivid reminder of the dangers of Cold War brinkmanship and the importance of diplomacy in resolving international crises.